Hello there, Sir from 17 once again. This is a pretty interesting topic video regarding modern warfare and its tumultuous existence right now. So I think it's fair to say that, as with every new Call of Duty, there's always a strange transition period between the last one and the new one. The last one becomes the best game ever made, and a vision of nostalgia that we can all say was far better than we gave it credit for. And the new one is a huge piece of dog shit that's staining our eyes so much so not even bleach can remove. And we don't know what to do because we now don't have a good game to play. A lot of people are leaving Modern Warfare. A lot of people are sticking with it. A lot of strong opinions, both for and against it. But the fundamental thing a lot of people can agree upon is that the game needs some adjustments. And there have been a lot of vocal people. A lot of vocal people on Twitter, a lot of vocal people streaming, a lot of vocal people on Reddit, various forums, and they're all saying and repeating the same things. These features keep coming up because they're important, and the developers are refusing to listen. They're listening to the wrong things. They're banning a lot of the discourse, a lot of the criticism, a lot of the well-needed input and advice, and instead they're championing changes that no one wants and no one really can understand what they're doing with it. And it's leading to this cognitive dissonance between the connection with the community and the developers. Because on one side, they said before the game came out that they were going to support it and do everything they can to keep in the loop and make sure that, Modern Warfare can thrive and survive. And now we're hearing absolutely nothing on the major issues and instead getting all hosts of things that almost go against the core tenets of what they originally advertised. This video is not going to be talking about the predatory battle pass and how they said that there weren't going to be any of that and they were going to take a stand against it, so they didn't want it to turn into what really ruined Black Ops 4. This isn't going to be about my general contempt and dislike for various features of the game. What this is going to be talking about is burying your head in the sand and the damages that it can really do to your franchise, to your game, and to your community. Because right now, guys, I know there is no consensus, but there is a decent idea of what the game needs objectively for it to be better on a baseline. And these are things they should be working on now. But as has been made aware via Reddit, they're asking us what we think they should tweak for us to come back. Because a lot of people are leaving, there's been an exodus from Modern Warfare. The numbers are obviously dwindling, or this survey wouldn't exist. And rather hilariously, somebody put this up on Reddit, and it became a very heated topic there. That's why I saw it myself. And it's been removed now, because the moderators on there, they don't want it to become too negative, and they want to completely control the history and the perception of this game, when in reality, there's a lot of people angry, myself included, and perhaps you too. So I've got a screenshot of this survey that they were sending to the players. I don't know if it's all of it, but it's a decent chunk of it. And it says, what, if anything, would convince you to start playing Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2019 again? And this sentence alone, this question, speaks volumes. And this video is going to be more about what isn't said, or what is actually meant, rather than the words themselves. Because looking at that tells me two things. It tells me Infinity Ward have been looking at their metrics, and those metrics reviewed a whole lot more players a month ago than it does right now. They're seeing a diminished value in their player base, and they're curious to ask the player base exactly what they could do to maybe get you back. Because not only have they introduced several patches that were almost sugar pills and didn't do anything and did things we didn't ask for and buffed things instead of nerfing and broke things instead of fixing things in a almost DICE-esque fashion, but on top of this, they've just released the biggest, greatest, fattest, ugliest, curviest, thick bitch of a DLC ever, and still they're not getting the response that they were in their delusional minds expecting or anticipating. So instead of looking at all this feedback and criticism and legitimate points that people are putting out on the internet to help this developer make a better game, tweaks that veteran players can see coming a mile away that would make it objectively better in an instant, that could probably be fixed on a server side or even on a client side and just flip a switch, turn off a piece of scripting and admittedly have a better game. Instead of that, instead of really getting down to what the core issues are and the problems of this game, and looking into the vision of what you want and saying, maybe I've been led astray, maybe my vision isn't best for our franchise, maybe I'm the problem, instead, they're asking us on what is to be resolved. And this is the list of things they're asking. The first thing to take from this, ladies and gentlemen, is they know these are problems. Each of these core problems that I'm about to read have now been justifiably known to the developer. They can't hide from them anymore. By putting them on this list, they're actively stating that they're there and that they know about them and that they know they're a problem that should be fixed. So the reason I think from just a complete base standpoint right now that this is a fundamentally redundant list, an obsolete practice, is that all of these fucking issues on here should be getting fixed right now. You shouldn't have to ask. If you know they're there, fix them. But without further ado, and I'll link to this in the description for the people who are impatient, the first one says, new in-game events and challenges. So would new in-game events and challenges bring you back to this Modern Warfare, guys? Are you the person that likes events when they kick off? Are you somebody who chases the challenges? Are you a guy that goes for that type of stuff? There are people like that. I don't think that's going to bring anybody back, unless those events are truly groundbreaking. And the only thing truly groundbreaking in Modern Warfare is just how fucking garbage it is and how poorly it runs on PC. So the next one is new multiplayer modes. As we've seen from the inclusion of Kill Confirmed, Hardpoint, there's a Reinforce, which is the most recent one. The game modes aren't helping. If the player base is dwindling so much that less than a month into this game's lifestyle you're asking what would bring you back because the numbers are obviously not what you want and nowhere near as high as expected, the modes aren't the allure, the modes aren't bringing people in. Because there's a compound issue here, guys. Doesn't matter how good the modes are if the game feels like dog shit to play, if the maps play like dog shit, if the whole experience is like rubbing dog shit in your eyes, it doesn't matter if you have the best modes in the game. You could have you get a BJ for the next 2 hours and win the lottery at the same time. Probably not going to be that great if you live in hell. Then it has new multiplayer maps. So this is a pretty strong one. For a lot of people, all they want is maps. Bring them more maps, more diversity, and it'll keep you playing a multiplayer game. How many times have you heard people say, just remake Black Ops 2 exactly as it was, just add 12 new maps and some new guns? People say stuff like that a lot, because in their mind, everything was mastered in that game. Everything was perfect. Bring it back with some new features, great game. Well, the problem with the new multiplayer map promise here is that Modern Warfare has proven, without shadow of a doubt, that everybody who was good at designing maps no longer works in this company. So the maps that we were given are these porous, several multi-lane, nowhere is safe, dynamic, hide in the fucking shadows on the bridge, according to promotional material. Like, every single map in this game is questionable at best, and compared to some of the maps in the previous games, would be nowhere near close to the echelon of their quality. And that's coming from somebody that, I quite like Hackney Yard when it doesn't play like shit. I quite like Gunrunner when it's not playing like shit. I quite like Shoothouse when it's not playing like shit, you know? There are good parts to the maps, there are just way more bad ones. And the problem here is, they've just released 3 classic maps, and by 3 I mean 1, and the other 2 will be drip-fed to us later on, because it's the biggest free update in the history of the world! So, the 3 maps they've released are all classic maps from better games, are all better maps from better times, from better CODs, and they play like shit in this game. So, the old maps don't play well in this game, the new maps don't play well in this game. There are now more Spec Ops missions than there are 6v6 maps, and there's more emphasis on the gunfight, a mode that I'm almost certain has the lowest player base out of all of the 3 modes, which has more maps than a lot of these other features too, and is a massive emphasis in spite of only really select people playing it. So the question and the conceit of new maps is not an appeal anymore, it's not an allure. There's just nothing to it. It's very difficult to justify new maps bringing people back when the current ones are so bad, and the ones they're giving us play horribly because they're adding doors and places that should never be there in the pursuit of safe spaces and all this other bollocks. So then they put, if there was a difficulty setting in Spec Ops Operations, I think that this is fucking hilarious. This is so hilarious. So, in 2009, Modern Warfare 2 released with a mode called Spec Ops. Spec Ops was a 2-player skirmish, where you went into scenarios rather short, anywhere between 2 to maybe 10 minutes, depending on how quickly you did them and how you approached them. And you and your buddy were tasked to complete a mission objective. A lot of them were areas taken from the campaign, with reworked scripting and interesting things happening, and a lot of the times they were quite crazy. You might be on the jet ski, or whatever it was called, the snow speeder thing. Other levels you were guiding a person via a chopper while the other person was on the ground, and then other levels were taking on immense amounts of juggernauts, and you were scored on a 1 to 3 metric for this, and depending on the difficulty you picked, depending on how difficult and how many stars you could get, so people could chase scores, they could try and speedrun, they could try to master them, things like that. It had replay value. It launched with difficulty settings for Spec Ops. This game hasn't got that, and the difficulty is set so difficult now that a lot of people don't even enjoy playing it because the game is fundamentally miserable almost the whole time. Enemies can literally two-hit kill you if they hit you with the right weapons, and they can do that from about 400 ranges because they don't miss because their aim is perfect. When you wear armor, the moment you get into a gunfight, you take so many shots and you get view kicked so hard you can't even fight back and all your armor's gone. You spend most of the Spec Ops experience laying on your belly waiting to regenerate because the game mode only gives you 1 stim. In a game mode where the stim should be infinite and that should be your main method of healing, it is instead worthless and doesn't really help because you can die while stimming because the stim animation is so slow compared to Black Ops 4 because realism and tactical and adaptation. So the difficulty settings in Spec Ops are a feature that should already exist, so the fact that they're asking the community if you would come back to the game if they had them is pathetic and insulting. The next one is if my technical problems were resolved, which I think is another fucking joke. What a wonderful, wonderful myopic vision they have here. If the game didn't run like shit, didn't micro-stutter up its arse, didn't constantly crash, didn't go down to 5 frames a second in a fucking menu and nothing's happening, if the internet wasn't a complete dice roll every gunfight you get into, if you weren't getting one-bulleted by every enemy gun and your gun hits 13 times and then they fuck off around a corner and kill you, like, if all the problems that this game had on the technical side between the desync and the tick rate and the performance, if all of that was resolved, would we come back? If all of that was resolved, it'd be a different fucking game. It might be fun. Maybe if you got rid of skill-based matchmaking, which I'm almost certain this list ain't going to pick because you won't talk about that, because why talk about the real cancer that's killing you when we can talk about video games causing people to shoot up schools? It has nothing to do with bad parenting or fucking societal pressures. Come on now. And then the next one is even better. If Spec Ops technical issues were resolved, make up your fucking mind, guys. Technical issues is all technical issues across all game modes. It's not just one area. What does that even mean? Does that mean technical issues as in, on console, it probably runs like dog shit on base Xbox? You can't see anything because the LOD is so fucking low. The draw distance is so low. Everything about it is so low. And then when you get into a gunfight, the frame rate shits the bed. How the fuck are you going to fix that on an old console? What are you going to do? Get a 2080 Ti? Good luck. So here, the first technical problems wasn't even enough, was it? Because now we have a modifier telling us that if Spec Ops technical issues were resolved, what you mean the technical issues like when you pick overkill and you start with 2 weapons and you can only use 1 weapon because it doesn't fucking work and it glitches out and you know about this, so you patched it and it still fucking happened to my friend on stream? Great patch, guys. Those sugar pills were fantastic. Maybe I should have put them in my mouth instead of up my fucking ass. But you see what I mean? The whole game is like this. If the fucking problems in Spec Ops were resolved, what, you mean there's problems where sometimes you can't use kill streaks? Or there's times when you jump off the roof and your parachute doesn't detect so you fucking instantly die? How about the times when you use the Juggernaut suit and you cancel it and it keeps the HUD on your screen so you can't see anything because it looks like you're staring through a fucking kaleidoscope that's broken? Horrible. And then here we go again. If multiplayer challenge progression issues were resolved. This is 3 points on this list, guys, of issues that shouldn't exist. They should not be here. These are issues that should never have existed in the first place, but they do because apparently, you know, small indie company Activision don't have enough fucking money on a multi-billion-dollar franchise that's one of the largest franchises in the world. Generates the most revenue up there with all kinds of ridiculous other ones. And they're asking us if challenge progression wasn't an issue. Challenge progression should never be an issue. Do you remember the challenge progression in COD 4 being a problem? Because I don't. I got the gold Uzi. I got the gold AK. I got the gold Desert Eagle. Did you? I'm sure you did. Simpler times. Shit fucking worked. I don't remember problems in Black Ops. I don't remember problems in any of them with challenges not counting. I don't remember any of these issues at all. How do you fuck this up 20 years later? It makes no sense. When did Call of Duty 1 come out? 2001? 2003? We've been doing this a long time. How do you fuck this up? And then the next one is fantastic too. If spawn logic issues in multiplayer were resolved. So we all know that the spawns in Modern Warfare are horrendous. They're absolutely abysmal at best. At worst, they're just spawn trap paradises, and most of the maps are designed in such a way that spawn traps happen as well. We knew about this in the beta because it happened there, and it still happens in the main game. Even the spawns in Spec Ops are bad. There's a wonderful gif going around of enemies spawning in midair and getting gunned down as people are shooting at them, as if they're being dropped in by a helicopter that doesn't exist. So they're saying if the spawn logic in multiplayer was resolved, how do you resolve spawn logic when we've had 20 of these fucking games and they've all had questionable spawns? Because spawns are something that are so difficult to get right consistently that you'll never get them right. Spawn is a necessary evil. The job of the person designing the spawn logic is to make sure that you get more good spawns than you do bad. The problem is, players don't remember good spawns, they only remember the bad ones, and the bad ones stand out, and if the bad ones are so bad they stand out so much, you're going to have a community talking about it, and that's the problem here. The spawns in Modern Warfare are some of the worst ones I've ever seen, and that's coming from a COD 4 player that used to run around the enemy spawn and literally stand in places so they would spawn near me so I could kill them. Bad spawns can be used to your advantage, but in Modern Warfare they're so sporadic and so bizarre that they're almost difficult to predict because they're so bad. This is something that they should have been working on, that should be fixed a month into the game's life cycle when we knew at the beta a month before it came out that they were bad. And then they've put, if cross-platform balance issues were resolved. I have no idea what this means. This is so bizarre to me. Balance between cross-platform, it can't exist. Consoles don't have the features that PC has, so PC will always have a hardware advantage until when they're equal, when they're both PCs intrinsically, and I don't know when that will ever be. PC's always going to have a massive advantage if the people have that hardware, but there's not always a guarantee that they do. The mouse and keyboard by default is better than controller. Obviously, aim assist is aimbot. It's way better than anything a human can do. So that is ridiculously unbalanced. But I don't know if they're looking at it from that perspective. I don't really get what they mean when it comes to balance. Do they mean how many are in the lobby with you? How it diversifies those lobbies? Because usually it's either a very heavy PC lobby or a very heavy console lobby. This is one of those amorphous parts that make me curious as to what they even mean by this and what it means to them as opposed to what we think it means. Because I don't have an answer, guys. And then they've put if weapon balance issues were resolved, which I think is really funny, because COD always has weapon-dominant metas. It always has these weapons that stand head and shoulders above everything else, because that's just the nature of the game. People will flock to the easiest choices. No matter how balanced the COD, there were always going to be strong ones. I come back to Black Ops 2, a game that had really good weapon balance. There were things like the Scar. The Scar in that game was absolutely monstrous on PC. Look at the FAL with the MMS sight. Absolutely monstrous as well. That's one of those guns that, if you see that, you know you're up against somebody who's trying their best, because it's just so broken on PC. On console, the MMS-C was a very powerful SMG, wasn't it? I can't quite remember if any of the assault rifles were all that dominant on console, but there are always these metas, they exist. So how exactly are you going to resolve these issues when a lot of the times the most broken stuff just get completely neutered and the stuff that can't compete never sees the buffs that needs to do so? You're always going to have weapons that lose out. It's just the way the meta is. And if you go the Modern Warfare 2 route where you make everything overpowered, everything feels really, really strong. And even in a game like that, there were guns like the UMP that were far, far better than others. There were the ridiculous, akimbo, anything that could be absolutely preposterous at certain ranges. And things like the Pocket M16, the Raffica that could do wonderful things. That pistol in Modern Warfare 2 is pretty much better than all the assault rifles in Modern Warfare. It's a monster. And then it says, if my friends started playing again, which I think is an interesting one, because I have a lot of friends who are not playing this game for good reasons. Sometimes friends can be the key that brings people back, but I feel like they're aiming this at the wrong people, because they should want to play it. They shouldn't want to play it because their friends are playing it. A lot of times you play a game because your friends are playing, because you don't like it. I play a lot of games with my friends because I'm playing with my friends, and if I didn't, I wouldn't play them. So I feel like that's a weak answer, that one. Then they've put, if progression issues were resolved. So once again, this is This is an interesting one because does this mean if we go back to prestiging so people can feel like leveling up means a fuck, instead of leveling up to 155 and then a month later you remove those levels? Nobody wants to get on a backwards marathon. When you're running, you want to go forwards. You don't want to go backwards, you know? The whole point in progression is to feel like you're moving forwards. Even if it's the illusion of that distance, it's helpful because it keeps that feedback loop applying to you and it keeps you playing. In this game, people get to 155 and then they feel like all the experience they get from that point onwards is wasted, and it gives them an incentive not to play because they're not achieving anything. People like to feel like they're building towards both short-term and long-term goals. It's simple human psychology. It's the things that keep us alive. And this is 1000% stunting that. But this might not be what it means. When they say progression, maybe it's some kind of bug in progression, because the game is so fucking buggy and barely works, you never know what you're talking about. But intrinsically, the core of the game needs to be fun to get people playing. The progression's meant to be the carrot on the stick that keeps you there longer because it's something that you enjoy too. If you don't enjoy the systems of the game, the fundamentals of the game, it doesn't matter how good the progression is because playing it isn't fun. And here is another core problem with Modern Warfare. A lot of the problems here are fundamental core problems. You can make the progression the most pretty, most addicting thing on the planet, but who wants to progress when the act that gets you to the progression is not enjoyable? So then they've got new Spec Ops experiences, missions, and maps, which this to me is painting over a crack and hoping it goes away. And there's a lot of this. I feel like Infinity Ward are the type of people too. If they don't look at something, it goes away. It's the Philip K. Dix, isn't it? The anti-Philip K. Dix, when he talks about reality. Which, if you don't know the quote, he says reality is that when, even when you close your eyes, doesn't go away. And it's an interesting notion, isn't it? The idea that even when you try to deny it by not looking at it, it still persists. And that's what these issues are. Giving us more Spec Ops experiences, missions, and maps is awesome because it's more content for people that like the mode. The problem here is the mode itself is flawed and broken and not very fun to play. So they're compounding more misery on top of existing misery, and unless you're Kathy Bates, you're probably not going to enjoy that because there's nothing there to be achieved. When a game mode isn't fun, does it really matter how many experiences that lie within it when you don't want to do it? So it's a problem. It's a problem that needs several fixes to become even something that you would even remotely want. And then they've put, if match balance issues were resolved. This is an interesting one, because this could be talking about skill-based matchmaking, but I think it might be more so about team-based matchmaking or match balancing as a whole. Because Call of Duty normally works with team-based matchmaking, and if you don't know what this means, it means that if you're a good player on Call of Duty, you will never get good players on your team, and if you do, it's a miracle. It's a miracle, enjoy it, it won't happen often, and you'll be punished afterwards. My entire time playing Call of Duty, ever since I started, from COD 4 onwards, I've always had horrible teams. Always. Because I was a above-average player when I played those games at the time. You will have had similar experiences. If you found yourself getting carried on a team by a good player, you were lucky enough to be bad enough to be on his team. Because usually, doesn't really happen. The only times it does happen are when there are two good players in the lobby and they offset each team to balance them. For instance, if we get into a game and you and I drop 30 kills and 5 deaths, on the next game, we're not on the same team because they don't want us to be because we're obviously too good to be on the same team and it's not fair. So their way of balancing is to put you against me, and then the next round we get to see who's better by getting into gunfights. And that's how they always did it. You can look back on all my Call of Duty videos, every single one I've put up on YouTube, and I've probably put near 500 of them. Every single one, if you check my team, it's full of low scores and underachievers, because that's the way they've always done it. In Modern Warfare, it doesn't work like that. In Modern Warfare, everyone on my team and everyone on their team is as good as me. And that's why every match is fucking miserable. Because I don't want to play against people as good as me. If I wanted that, I'd be on CWL, you know. I'd be snorting fucking gamer fuel with my gamer rugs and my gamer socks pulled up. And that's just not what I'm looking for. I'm looking to have a good time. I'm looking to get my streaks. I'm looking forward to being like, look at these guys, absolutely demolished them, because I'm pretty convinced they're hooked up to a life support machine. That's not the experience Modern Warfare offers. Modern Warfare offers you get to be the nail just as much as you were ever the hammer in the previous games, and nobody wants to be the nail. So who knows what that means, but that could be a good one. And then the final point is another funny one. If multiplayer allowed me to vote on maps... How long have people been asking for map voting? Map voting has been around for a long time in Call of Duty, guys. You've been doing it for years. You might not have even realised you were doing it, and I don't even think it's that big of a deal, but when all your maps are shit and a good map comes up, maybe these people want to cling to the idea of playing one of the better maps, the Necessary Evil. The fact that they're asking this is hilarious. Who the fuck thinks voting on a map is going to fix all these problems? I've not even talked about the core problems or the fundamentals. I've just talked about some of the offshoot problems, some of the things that bug me personally that could easily be fixed. I've not really gone into a lot of the really crippling stuff. And they think that map voting is going to completely remedy everything. This is going to be the sugar pill that pushes me over the edge into this willfully sanguine mood of Modern Warfare is the greatest Call of Duty ever. Please pay me now. Sign the check, Activision. It's just bizarre. I wanted to cover this though, guys, because I saw it and it shocked me. It shocked me that a developer can be so behind where the community is and think they're so far ahead. I've never seen such delusion, and I watch Darkside Phil. I really don't have much more to say, guys. I've spoke for too long as it is. What do you think? Do you think this list is a joke? Do you think these developers are clueless? Do you think they all should be fired? Do you have some suggestions that could help fix Modern Warfare? How are you feeling about it? Where do you think it's going to be in a month from now? Is the game dying or is it thriving to you? Thank you for watching, and you take care now.